All hail the king. Here's your look at the Star Ace. This is the Kong Skull Island soft vinyl figure series of Kong 2.0. The Kong 2.0 Deluxe soft vinyl statue shows the protector of Skull Island in a defiant roar with arms outstretched wide. This piece is meticulously sculpted to show the rage in his face, all the detail of his hair, and the battle scars across his chest. He is painted by hand to bring out all the incredible nuances of his expression and to recreate the realism that makes the figure look alive. Normally, this would be the time in the review in which I would show you guys how tall the statue stands. Technically, you can display Kong in two different ways. Nobody's actually telling you have to display him with the display stand if you so don't wish. The neat thing about it, though, is that they make it available so that Kong is fully realized all on his own. If you do want to have him displayed without the stand, you can perfectly do that fine, as, like I said, he stands fine on his own. So we're going to do two different measurements going on here. The first one we're going to do is figure out how tall Kong stands on his own, and then we're going to add him onto his display stand. So I'm going to take it to the very top of his very large monkey head. I'm going to stop it right there. According to my readouts, the statue of just Kong, mind you, of course, without the display stand, stands impressively at 13 inches in height. And that in centimeters works out to be 33.2 centimeters tall. Then we're going to go ahead and just put everything down for the time being. We're going to move the stand over. Don't worry, I'll show you guys a close-up look at what the stand looks like in a second. And we'll place Kong's feet inside the supplied holes that they've put for the figure. We're just going to keep everything in place like that. Now we're going to go ahead and resume where we left off, switching it back over to inches so that I can show you guys. From the bottom of now him on his base to the very top of his head, stop it right there. It does give him a much needed extra bit of height, working out to be 13.9, so almost 14 inches in height. And in centimeters, again, you're looking at it being 35.5. So yes, it does add a little bit of extra height to the already cool looking Kong. Putting things back, though, the way we had found it, I want to show you guys what the display stand looks like, and then we'll get a good gander at this giant gorilla. Kong Skull Island, presented here from the folks over at Star Ace, gets a nice exquisite looking display stand with a rock face around the entire parameter. It's fully finished all the way around. If you tip the stand upside down, you're treated not only to a shocking, screaming look at Kong, as well as Kong Skull Island Limited Edition and then Monsterverse, which is a subcategory line that Star Ace is producing. You also get yourself some rubberized feet, 4 in total, actually, if you count them out. It's perfect for if, again, you want to display this on any surface. These rubberized feet come in handy, as they prevent the scratching of the surface if you happen to be shifting the statue base around. To put a little ID on the front of the display stand to tell you whose stand it actually belongs to, they've put Kong Skull Island on the front. I like that this is raised font lettering, that it sticks up from the surface of the terrain. It also tells you exactly which movie this is pulled from. Not to say that this couldn't simply just be a King Kong, but this one so happens to be pulled from the movie, a precursor to his eventual battle with the King of the Monsters, Godzilla. Somewhat large footprints also make their appearances on both sides that will hold the statue in place. It's something I will want to talk about in a second. You've got some little grassy terrain happening right there, and a shipwrecked boat, as you can see, that looks like it's been torn in half. It's been rusted in a nice rust red color, with some additional lighter beige colors sort of making their way along the appearances of the top and like the deck area of the boat. It's again a nice looking representation, a nice icing on the cake for what will be the spectacle that we'll have a look at in a second. I just want to also stress too that these pieces, this particular stand feels like it's hollow, so it's not going to be as heavy as perhaps as what you're thinking it might be. Quite the contrary, actually. It's a very light PVC style plastic that they're using not only for the base but also for Kong that we'll have a look at. Looking at Kong now, this is Kong 2.0. We did recently have a look at the first version of Kong. If you certainly would like to go check out that video, you should be able to find it here on this channel. But this is 2.0 version of Kong, which is a much more aggressive looking expressioned Kong. As you can see here, he is screaming something fierce. Before we talk about that, he does have his propeller in hand. The instructions being very vague and very small in size, really only indicate that you have this metal chain that drapes down from the propeller blade, and you're simply just going to wrap it around his arm. That's basically all you have to do, just wrap it around his arm, and you'll get a little bit of extra that's draping down from his arm. Now, that's entirely your own prerogative as to how long you want to have this chain draping. You could have it longer if you certainly wish, or you can wrap it again around, but it doesn't really quite clear another wrap around his very large forearms. I like that he does come included with something in his hand as opposed to just a pair of closed fists. The propeller, to its credit, has a fair bit of rusting that's been added to it, of course only done by paint. The colors seem like a rusted brownish orange mixed with a little bit of a gunmetal gray and a little bit of black, all come together to give you a really nice, well-executed propeller that's in Kong's hand here. As you could probably guess, I could spend a whole lot of time talking about the meticulous amount of detailing that the Star Ace artists were able to craft, forge in these little tiny hairs, all different from one another here on the main body of Kong. I mean, obviously, we want to really start with talking about the head sculpt, which is a slight different head sculpt than what we had gone with Kong the first release, which I also reviewed on this channel. The earlier release had the closed mouth, but this now gives a full sight of what Kong's rage is capable of being, complete with a full open wide mouth. This is also a great opportunity to really showcase the amount of detailing that Star Ace put into things like the inside of his mouth, things you would not normally spend a lot of time to look at, but when you really see how much they've actually been able to do, not only that, but look at the amount of paint that they've put in just the mouth and just the mouth alone. How all of those little decayed teeth, it does seem like he's got cavities everywhere. That's what happens when you eat what Kong eats in the movie. And you, of course, aren't caring for the teeth the way that he should be. You're seeing all this decay done in the teeth. Expertly painted. Of course, sculpt goes a long way, but if it's not painted properly, you get a lot of those details get lost. As you can hopefully see in this, there's just as much paint as there is sculpting to Kong here. That mouth looks fantastic. Of course, you got the eyes staring right at you, which kind of is a bit unsettling. Like with the other Kong, you got a more bright, kind of pumpkin orange iris here looking right at you, and you got the very stark black pupils again staring at you. They don't have a reflection to the light, the eyeball that is. There's no little droplet of white that's been added to it. It's simply just the studio lights that's reflecting off of the eyes. It seems like they've added a little bit of a clear coat to the eyes so that that does in fact reflect the light. And it's very successful the way they've done that. Star Ace painters really did work their magic when it came to painting the fur of Kong, which you would just guess would be grays or a couple of different shades of gray, nothing much else of that. But really when you look at it, there's a whole lot of extra color that's been incorporated to it. It's not just simply gray. If you get closely looking at it, you can see how the individual hairs are more grayish, but then at the base of it, more sunken in, are these little colors of rusted orange peeking their ways out. You see more of that really when you look at Kong's fur on his arms, for example. More of that rusted orange I was talking about really is more profound and stands out a little bit more here on the arms. I see more of that also in the leg area too. One thing, of course, we certainly can't overlook the sculpting of the additional claw marks running across the torso here of Kong, like he did have in the original release as well, has also been nicely painted, going more subtle pink more than anything else. It looks more like a healed wound rather than something that was fresh and just recently cut into his flesh. As we move further down the figure, we get more of that rusted orange happening. Ironically enough, there's one bit of articulation on this figure, and it's only in the legs. And it's simply, I think, just by the way that they attached it in place. I'm wondering why they actually did have these as separate sculpted pieces. Why they simply just didn't sculpt the entire figure, because it seems like from head to arms, to torso, to toes, it would have easily been one sculpted statue, as opposed to sculpting individual feet. But it seems like that's the case here. They sculpted individual feet for Kong, and then simply have just attached those in place. It does, because of that, give you a little bit of extra posability, but there's not really much to be spoken of. I mean, and then when you also look at the display stand, there's only one way that you can really attach the feet, and maybe we'll have a look at those right now. Bringing in the display stand again, I want to show you again, we looked at those pressed in footprints for Kong. And you know, when you look at the statue standing just on his own, I actually find he stands better without the use of the stand. Where you do actually take the figure and you have to then line him up to the footprints here, might have also had some reasoning why they made foot articulation on the figure, so that you could line up the feet. Again, I feel like this is simply could just have been perfected by sculpting the entire statue as one piece. But nonetheless, when you do put him on his display stand, like I said, he does fit into those grooves. But I do find it throws off the balancing slightly for the figure. I don't know if it's because he does have to be then constricted and confined to those smaller spaces, where maybe his feet don't quite completely line up. But I found when he was on his display stand, he did wobble a little bit, where he doesn't feel like he's completely in place. I'm wondering if actually the surface, the footprint in which Kong's sticking into, isn't completely leveled flat, resulting in Kong, when you do put him on his display stand, he does, like I said, wobble just a slight bit. I don't feel there's the risk that he's going to topple over on me. That being said, though, if you are looking to pick up and move Kong to different areas on your shelf, it would probably be a good idea to take the monkey off first, move the stand to the place where you want to put Kong, and then put the very large ape back down on the stand, so that you don't run the risk of nudging him and the figure statue here falls over. Starry's did some cool things with the pose and proportions of this primate as he's poised on top of this display stand. Didn't mean to spit all over you. The neat thing about the stand is the fact that you've got that shipwrecked boat. So right off the bat, you already know scale-wise how big this one is versus what we know size-wise is a boat. It's a good way to kind of gauge how big and make some larger than life. Now, the packaging does tout this as being a 12-inch soft vinyl figure. I clock him actually closer to being 13.5 inches when it's all said and done, when you, of course, put him on top of the display stand, which is, of course, one thing I really like also about this piece is that you can remove Kong completely from his base, and it's not attached. In other words, he doesn't have a nuisance peg that you have to worry about. If you take him completely off the base, if you want to go sans le base, for example, you can fully display Kong completely on his own and leave the display base off in its entirety. One other thing I really like that this statue has is the incorporating of the propeller blade. It gives him something different to hold on to, so he's not just waving his arms about, screaming into the sky. It also gives them the opportunity to incorporate some different materials to the statue, like, for example, the metal chain that you can wrap around his arms. One thing I really would love to see Star Ace do with this sculpt, because I love the sculpt so much, is introduce him as an exclusive, for example, an all black and white treatment. To be fair, Kong Skull Island is a colorized film, but it would be a great throwback to Kong's earliest appearance in the film verse, in the film movies, of course, that came out. His classic black and white color scheme, I think, would lend itself extremely well to the sculpt that Star Ace put in this piece. A big thank you, by the way, to the folks over at Star Ace who were nice enough to send this my way. Did you guys manage to pick up the Kong Skull Island for yourself? I always find that a bit of a tongue twister to say Kong Skull Island. But this was nonetheless Kong 2.0, an upgrade, though I don't feel necessarily an upgrade, or just more so a different expression to an already cool-looking Kong. Let me know down below, weigh in your thoughts, members of the mob, what you guys think of Kong Skull Island, Kong 2.0. That's going to be a bit of a mouthful and a long read-up to put into the title. If you guys are also new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. If you are new to this channel, hit that bell notification and keep your peepers peeled, because there's going to be a whole lot of Star Ace reviews coming your way. If you guys also would like to go back and have a look at some of the other Star Ace reviews that I've done up to this point, ranging from Kong all the way down to smaller Harry Potter in those 6-scale figures, you can most definitely check out my playlist of Star Ace. As I said, there's going to be a whole lot of Star Ace reviews coming your way. As always, guys, thanks for watching as you always do, and I'll see you guys next time.